Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 25 of Mythos Busters. It is 25, right?
Yeah, it is 25.
Yeah, that's the thing. Okay, 25 of Mythos Busters, where today it's just the two of us. It's me, Sean, and Ian. Hi, Ian.
I'm here. I'm not sure which of us is the mini-me, and I don't really want to go into it so we don't hurt anyone's feelings, but...
You and I. I'll be your mini-me.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, just schedules got weird this weekend, and the other two guys were not able to make it, so just the two of us this time. So it's actually going to be a pretty high and tight episode, I feel. Yeah. So we've got our news, as you might expect. And today we're talking about Carcosa, and with a special focus on the player cards. I don't know if we're going to get around to talking about the scenarios yet, because I actually kind of want the other two guys to be able to weigh in, because I feel like Carcosa's scenarios are a little special so far.
There's a lot to talk about there, for sure.
There's a lot to unpack, yeah. So, anyway, probably won't get there this time, but expect that for next episode. And then, of course, we'll wrap it up with some tentacle time. So, to start us off, Ian, what you been playing lately? You got any campaigns of note in progress?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of been spreading my attention across a few different things, but I did get a new two-handed campaign.
No!
That never happens. Usually there's one new thing added per week, but I did start a new two-handed campaign with Akachi and Jenny, actually, and I was... thinking of, I wanted to try Akachi, and I wanted to do another two-handed, so I was like, who can I pair with her? And I actually end up having a lot of fun with the two-handed campaigns where I kind of use two well-balanced investigators as compared to, like, I find when you do the kind of fighter and clover, like, it works very well, but I also have a lot of fun when you kind of do the two independent investigators. So
when you're specializing, at least I don't know if this is your experience in two-handed, but when you're doing specialized builds, I find that I have to kind of burn my brain thinking about positioning way more. Like, because right now I'm running a Mark and Rex campaign through Dunwich, and kind of the whole time I'm thinking like, all right, how far away can Mark get and still be there to rescue Rex if he needs it? And like, kind of just always thinking about where everyone's at. Where I think when you're dealing with kind of well-rounded investigators, you don't have to worry about that so much.
Yeah, that's kind of what spurred the Jenny thing as well, because I was thinking, with Jenny I could run Lone Wolf with the idea that because they are both balanced, they don't need to be in the same spot all the time in terms of positioning, which is actually...
So Akachi's always going first then, right? And moving out of the location?
Yeah, pretty much. She's always going first, or they're just like, kind of off doing their own thing, that it's not even an issue, but yeah, it's worked
I don't know.
well.
Have you played Lone Wolf in like true multiplayer before yet?
No.
Oh my god. To sum up the experience of playing Lone Wolf in multiplayer, there's just like, as everyone's deciding what turn or what they're going to do with their turn, who's going to go first, the rogue player presumably is just kind of sitting there looking at the other person who's in their location going like, so you gonna get out, or what's happening here?
Like gently pushing him out the door. It's like when a party's trying to wrap up and you're trying to awkwardly figure out how to get them out of the house because you want to go to bed.
It's tough to do the Irish goodbye when you're when it's your own house.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, and I mean, I'll save the Akachi part of it because we're going to talk Akachi today. But just in general, it's been a lot of fun. Just that those two investigators have pretty much been able to just kind of spread out to separate parts of the map and do their own thing, which helps to cover ground. So I played through the two Carcosa scenarios, and they did very well.
Nice. And yeah, I don't know. We'll get to the Carcosa scenario. Sorry, I was about to bust into something that's best. held off for later. So yeah, so for me, I'm actually primarily my Arkham play right now is prepping for Arkham Knights, where we're doing our Iron Man Dunwich run through. Where on the Saturday of Arkham Knights, there's I think there's almost 4 teams now that are all going to sit down, or not Saturday of Arkham Knights, not Saturday night. It's going to take all day. We're just going to sit down as 4 different groups and just pound through the Dunwich scenario. So we're actually kind of metagaming it. We chose our investigators carefully. We're talking about deck lists together. This is really the first time I've kind of done that for this game. Done it for Lord of the Rings a fair bit, because that kind of requires a bit more coordination, I feel. But
that's awesome. Yeah, that's something I'd definitely be part of if I was going.
Next year.
Yeah.
Next year. We'll get you here. Yeah, so I've been... I know everyone probably assumes that I'm playing Agnes, but actually Mr. Trench has Agnes. I'm playing Mark, and testing Mark has been a lot of fun, because that dude can kill him some monsters.
I feel like he kind of falls into your wheelhouse, too, of getting something good for getting damaged. So.
It's exactly true. And, card draw in this game can be kind of a thing, but I feel like... I don't know. I feel like I am kind of past the point where I am like, not too much card draw, because you just get on with it, right? It's just more aggro. You have more options. You're more able to deal with whatever crap your weaknesses do to you because you're drawing through them so much more quickly. I don't know. Mark has been a lot of fun to play, and I don't know how I feel about him in 2-player, because that's what I'm doing right now, is actually running 2-player to test him, even though we're doing 4-player. But he's a lot of fun. Yeah. The one thing that has been giving me pause in this entire thing is it's Rex's, the Rex deck I'm using is Scott's build. That's just kind of absolutely min-maxed for clue acquisition, and then obviously my Mark is min-maxed for just complete enemy liquefying. Both of them have a lot of draw in the deck, though. Mark just kind of by default, and Rex because, he's yellow. And those scenarios where Beyond the Veil is a thing...
Yeah.
It's kind of... It's been interesting. So, the cool thing about it, though, is I feel like of all the investigators we have, if anyone's going to survive that 10 damage hit... It's Marcus Hannigan.
Yeah,
Harrigan.
Sure.
Harrigan.
That's true.
So I actually had a really cool play the other day where both decks were kind of getting a little bit down there, and neither of them had drawn Beyond the Veil yet. Mark drew a Beyond the Veil. Couldn't really do anything about it, so I'm like, all right, fine, now I just need to get hit points out there so I can survive that hit, because it's happening. And then surged into an enemy or something. Then the next draw was Rex pulled Beyond the Veil. I'm like, oh god, but Rex can't take it. But oh wait, Mark had let me handle this in his hand. I was like, yeah. And then he pulled another enemy off the surge. So it was just like, all right, well, everyone's doing what they're doing. So Mark's a lot of fun, guys. Is the moral of that story? Try him out.
That's the central thesis of that.
He can't investigate for shit, but man, he handles enemies.
Yeah, I haven't gone back to Dunwich with the new Gators, actually, so I forgot about Beyond the Veil being a thing. I think I've, repressed those memories.
Yeah, it kind of flavors the campaign for kind of punishing heavy draw decks, which, is fine, because I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. Beyond the Veil... I go back and forth on liking the design of it and hating the design of it, because I think you were the one who said what's more fun than not drawing cards in a card game.
Yeah.
but at the same time I appreciate what it's trying to do.
Right. Yeah. I definitely have the mixed feelings about it too, where there's definitely been times where I'm like, why is this card here? It's just terrible, but at other times it does add another layer of tension and an alternate lose condition, which is kind of interesting. So I don't know.
Yeah, it was funny. By the time I blew through my deck and had to take the 10 damage, I was able to get out 2 True Grits and a Dr. Francis Morgan.
Nice.
So I didn't have to take a single damage on Mark when that hit. It was stupid. Anyway.
Well,
so it gave me hope, because that was my big worry with Mark, is like, man, if his main thing is like I draw cards, if I get hit with the Beyond the Veil, that's going to suck. But I'm not so afraid of it anymore.
Yeah. The interesting thing about it is how it's like tied to a cycle. It wasn't a core set treachery, so that, you know, we are going to have cycles without that pressure. And I think once Carcosa is done, we'll get a really good sense of like how it changes things having that versus not having Beyond the Veil.
Yes, exactly. I feel like it's one of the things that, and I think what this game can do, and I think what it is going to do, is like each cycle is going to feel like its own meta game, where like already I feel like you don't build the same kinds of decks to play through Path to Carcosa as you did for the Dunwich Legacy box. Like straight up, there are just things that I would do differently kind of on a bedrock level for any investigator. So yeah, I agree.
Well, I remember, I can't remember, this is the problem with being involved in 2 games and 2 podcasts, like I can't remember which designer and which game this was in reference to, but I remember at some point either Caleb or Matt talking about how when they design encounter deck, or it may have even been Nate, but talking about how when they design encounter decks, it's like designing like a deck for a tournament where you're figuring out the play strategy for that deck. So I feel like the ancient ones are similar, where I think Yog's thing was like milling. Like if he was a player of a competitive game, his whole thing was trying to like deck you out and beat you that way. And so I don't know if we have a good sense yet of what Hastor's whole thing is going to be, but
craziness is what
potentially
so
something
far.
we could talk about when we talk about the scenarios, I think.
All right, yeah, so let's move it on. We're going to skip on past the community highlights this week since we don't have Nick, and I would just be reading his notes, which wouldn't be fun for anyone since he actually has insight and gets excited and plays the things that he talks about.
Yeah,
so
can't replicate the enthusiasm.
No, you can't replace Nick. So we'll skip on past that. Ian, what news have we this week?
The only news we've had is just the official announcement of Arkham Knights 2017 as far as what's going to be there. And not much else. So as far as the official announcement, it's going to be October 13th and 14th, which is next weekend.
Yeah.
And
possibly this weekend, depending on how quickly we turn this sucker around.
Yeah, true. It's going to be at the Fantasy Flight Game Center, of course. So I think the things people are most interested in who are listening to this podcast is like what the things have to do with this game. So there is swag, and the swag is going to be the Labyrinth of Lunacy deck. We don't know whether there's going to be a different alt art card than we got at Gen Con, which was the alt Leo.
It's tough to know.
Yeah, it is.
Because, okay, so last year we didn't get an alt art card. We just got the Curse of the Rougarou on early release.
Yes.
So using the Arkham precedent, we're not going to get one. However, if we use the Lord of the Rings precedent, where, you know, they offer the same scenario both at Gen Con and then at a later date, there's different promos that go with it. So I don't know what to think. I think they would have displayed it in the little fan there, right?
Yeah, I feel like usually they... Well, again, using the Lord of the Rings precedent, they usually announce like, oh, it's going to come with this promo. But yeah, there's no way of knowing. I guess we'll find out next weekend. I
also like how last year's bag was the Elder Sign and this year's bag is the Tentacle.
Yeah, so the other part of the swag, you get a tentacle bag, which I feel like is just asking for it if you use that as your chaos bag. There's the Arkham Horror deck box, and the other interesting thing is last year they had the kind of interview panel for Arkham Horror the card game, and this year there's kind of a create a card type event for the card game, which is apparently attendees are going to be chosen at random. They're going to be in a card council with Nate and Matt, and they're going to get a chance to actually create a card for Arkham Horror, the card game.
Via a panel, right? Yeah, just kind of a group design. They did something similar for Lord of the Rings back in the day, kind of in the first or second cycle, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, they did.
They ended up, if I recall from Brian's story, they workshopped a hero that ended up, Brian was gearing for Éomer at the time, and that design didn't stick all the way through to what actually Éomer ended up being, but his horse Firefoot ended up being that kind of effect.
Right.
Ended up being kind of trample.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see. I'd love to see if we can swing our podcasting badge around a little bit and weasel our way into that so we can kind of cover it and report back, because that seems like it'd be something interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting, at least for people, just to see what it was like and get that insight into it.
Maybe someday FFG will recognize the value we try to add to the community and help us do that. They don't really help us do that very often.
Laying on the guilt thick.
There are no just so everyone's aware, there are no press badges for Arkham Knights.
All those
the
hours
best I can do
spent
is be
slaving away at the podcast.
The best I can do is be like, Matt, can I come in, please?
So
yeah,
I'm gonna put out my plea now. If you get on that card council, I do expect a Brown Jenkins card themed card of some kind.
No. You shut your mouth. What I'm hoping is that someone, if we can't get in, or one of us can't get in to kind of talk about it after the fact, I hope that someone who is in on this card council would be willing to possibly write up an article, kind of a brief, or whatever form it takes of that experience, and it would be really cool, just I think, for people who can't be there to be able to kind of just see how it went.
Yeah.
And, when the card eventually comes out, or whatever effect they come out with comes out in whatever form it comes out, that it'd be cool to be like, hey, we designed that as a community.
Definitely, for sure.
So anyway,
so since you're going to be there and I'm not, what are the, did you want to run down the other stuff that kind of Mythos Busters related that's going to be there?
Oh yeah, I should probably do that. So basically we're going to be there from Friday morning on, and the doors don't actually open to the event until Friday evening. We'll be in kind of the game space. Scott's showing up early. I can't remember if Nick took Thursday off or if he'll be there in the afternoon, but anyway, we'll be around. So if you're going to be there on Thursday, come find us. Again, join our Discord. We have an Arkham Knights 2017 channel where you can coordinate, see where people are at, hook up for games, that sort of thing. Saturday is the Iron Man Dunwich. There is a sign-up sheet pinned to our Arkham Knights. No, it's the Iron Man Dunwich channel, because we have a channel specifically for chatting about that. So if you're interested in joining a team for that, do it quickly, because chances are by the time this releases, the time will be short. And then Saturday night will be Tentacale time too. So at like 10-ish, we'll start heading over to Joe Sensors from the Game Center, have some drinks, share some apps, play some party games. It'll be a good time. We've got like at least 20 people coming this year so far, so it should be a pretty good turnout, and I think we can have like up to 60, so don't be shy about coming.
Nice. Meanwhile, at home, I'll be doing my tinfoil man. I'll get through like one scenario and then have to go off and do something else.
It's a lot easier when you can separate from your family and friends.
Yeah, that turns out that's
kind of half the purpose of going to the FFG Center.
Yeah, for sure.
Told you never to bother me when I'm Iron Manning.
Have my own little Iron Man shirt on. So the other cool thing that's Mythos Busters related is Kenji, our resident bag maker. I don't know if that's the exact term, the professional term, but he makes a lot of the cool chaos bags that us in the community use. Yeah, Doma in the chat says the bag man. I like that.
I'm sure that's what his friends call him.
So the bag man, Kenji, he is created some special Arkham Knights 2017 bags, one of which has the manatee on it, the famous Mississippi manatee, and the other with the equally famous emergency quiche. So if you're interested in getting those, you can hop on our Discord or and contact Kenji there, or email him, and then you can go ahead and get your order in so you can get those from him.
And you can also stay tuned to this very podcast, because I ordered an extra and we'll be giving it away as a prize shortly after Arkham Knights.
Nice.
Yeah. So if you want yourself a Mississippi manatee bag, look no further, or just go buy one.
And who wouldn't, honestly?
It's so cute. Seriously, my first reaction was like, "Oh my god, it looks like Hyde Larceny Eeyore." He's so adorable.
I feel like if I never contribute anything else to any gaming community, I'll be content just having contributed the Mississippi manatee.
Yes, I'm doing my thing because both of the running jokes that have apparently stuck with the podcast, neither of them I had anything to do with. So I'm kind of in the mindset of like one win, all win. Me too. I'll get my inside joke out there someday.
Yeah, you have to go back to the lab and workshop it.
All right, so does that wrap us up for the news? Anything else
that's it. We're still waiting on Echoes to come out, which there's no release date yet, but hopefully in the next few weeks it'll come out.
Which, I'm just, like, for how busy I've been lately, and like I can't wash the stank of my crazy summer off me for the life of me. Like, I hope that after Arkham Knight's things will actually calm down, but I think that's probably just an illusion at this point. Yeah. I'm kind of thankful for little breaks here and there. Like, part of me always wants everything as soon as I can get it, but then the adult part of me recognizes, like, yeah, it's probably okay that I don't have any internal pressure to play something new right now.
Yeah, I know it's sacrilege to say that, but I kind of feel the same way. Usually the big delays in LCGs, from my experience, are, at least the cooperative ones, are between the deluxe and the first pack of the cycle, and I kind of appreciate that because it gives you time to really try out all the new player cards and the scenarios, and because you get a big dump in the deluxe, so trying all those out, and then once the cycle hits, everything kind of comes out very consistently, so it's hard to find that time.
And I think I have no evidence to back this up, but I think the reason they do that is to kind of butt it up against the release of the next deluxe, or try to lessen the space between the end of one cycle and the beginning of the next. So I don't know. Anyway, just silver linings, I guess. Hopefully Echoes will come out soon.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move it on to Carcosa. So, talking a little bit about, we got to start with the investigators, right?
Yes.
So many of these dudes do just wacky different things. So I know we talked about Lola the entirety of last episode, so we'll kind of keep it. Do we even keep it light? We talked about her exhaustively last episode. Go listen to last episode if you want to talk about Lola.
Yeah, Lola is an investigator in this box. See last episode.
She's a riddle wrapped in an enigma. Oh god, and Nick's got his little subtitles here for each of the investigators that I must use.
Yeah, you have to.
I can't not. So, Ian, why don't you hit me, baby, one more time and read Mark for us?
Alrighty. So Mark Harrigan is the soldier. He's a guardian investigator. He has 3 will, 2 intellect, 5 combat, and 3 agility. Veteran traded. You begin the game with Sophie in loving memory in play. Reaction: after damage is placed on a card you control, draw 1 card, limit once per phase. Elder Sign effect +1 for each damage on Mark Harrigan. He has 9 health and 5 sanity. And his deck building is pretty restrictive. It's basically all the Guardian cards, all the neutral cards, and tactic cards level 0.
So, tactic cards. That's kind of his thing. I kind of thought his thing would be weapon cards of any class, but I suppose that could get pretty nuts too, depending on what they plan to do with weapons in the future. Tactic cards I have felt to be pretty good, and for the most part I use them to enhance his mobility. So Shortcut, I feel, has been a stellar include in Mark. I'm always using that, whether I'm like pushing an ally out to give them an extra action to go investigate, or whether I'm moving to someone to go attack an enemy, so I can have an extra action once I get there to actually kill the thing. And then, what's the other big one? Elusive, I think, is the other one that I'm using. Kind of in a different way. It's a little bit more conditional, but we've talked about Elusive a lot. It's really powerful.
Yeah. I think those are the kind of the 2 best buys for him. But I think what's good about that is they're 2 movement-related things, which turn out to be very good for your combat guy, particularly, and kind of 2-player up with other players that you can quickly get to where you need to be and get other players out of situations.
Yeah. So, like you alluded to earlier, I love effects that take a negative thing that's happening to you and turn it into a positive. Taking damage, drawing a card. Great. especially since with Mark we now have so many assets that can now have damage put on them. So level 2 Beat Cop is amazing. Guard Dog is really good. True Grit that came in the box. Yeah, what else am I putting damage on for him? Any objective allies, I suppose. Yeah, he churns through the deck, and that was one thing playing the other Guardians. I always felt like, man, Guardian does not have much card draw.
They don't, no.
It feels really good as a Guardian to just have a handful of like 7 cards most of the time.
Yeah. I think the key thing there is that it's damage placed on a card you control as opposed to on Mark himself, which means that you can kind of, put it on a Guard Dog and still get the card without putting that because you're already putting extra stress on him through Sophie, which we'll talk about in a second. So having that ability to put it elsewhere.
Yeah, why don't we just read Sophie?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't talk about Ashcan without Duke, so let's not talk about Mark without Sophie.
Yeah, so Sophie is a double-sided special asset for Mark, which is the first we've seen of that. The side that starts in play is in Loving Memory. Mark Harrigan deck only. Sophie cannot leave play. It starts in play. The free triggers to take 1 direct damage to get +2 to your skill value for this skill test. And forced if Mark Harrigan has 5 or more damage on him, flip Sophie, which turns it to the "it was all my fault" side, which you get -1 to each of your skills. If Mark Harrigan has 4 or less damage on him, flip Sophie. So if you can manage to heal him, then it turns back to the good side.
Technically, should that one be fewer? I don't know if that's worth Stannising or not. I think it's fewer.
I think it should be, but I feel like they always use less on the FFG cards instead of fewer for some reason.
I feel like I am making the Stannis comment a lot when we talk about cards, so maybe that's a deliberate maybe that's a deliberate language thing.
Something. I don't know.
Fewer. All right. So yeah, I've heard a couple people argue that Sophie is kind of what makes Mark playable in solo. Mm-hmm. I haven't been brave enough to verify that myself. But being able to take a damage to get +2 probably to intellect most of the time, because that's what he needs the most help with to actually complete a freaking scenario. Yeah, but just like the ability that it starts in play, and you can do this at any time unless you're being prevented from triggering free triggered actions. Just like, okay, because Mark himself, like if you look at Ashcan and Duke, like Duke is amazing. But Ashcan is kind of hobbled by himself to compensate. Sophie's really good. Mark has no kind of like downside to him. I mean, like Sophie has this little flip thing that goes on, but I have personally felt like it's not that hard to keep him above that damage threshold. I think I've only ever had to flip Sophie like twice.
Yeah, I think partially it's like using it wisely when you really need it, and then it's partially including the healing, which I guess there are 2 big questions for me with Mark. One is how much healing do you include, and then the other one is like what are you going to use all that card draw for? But for the first one, how much healing do you find yourself using in Mark?
Personally, I have only been running 2 emergency aid thus far. First aid, I hemmed and hawed about it. It seems a little slow. Most of the time, Mark is kind of either taking a few actions to get resources and set up for a future enemy, or he's rushing his ass over to help someone out with another enemy. So I don't know. I don't know about first aid. It's probably okay, but I'm just too afraid that it's going to be too slow and kind of dead. Whereas emergency aid is just like get it done, slap some mud on it and go.
Yeah, I think I only ran the 2 emergency aids as well. I think you can definitely make this like the first investigator. You can make a really good case for first aid in, which is nice. It's giving life to that card.
Damn you, Matt Newman!
I think painkillers is also a good option. That's the take a sanity hit to remove the damage. The thing is, Mark has lower sanity, but you can find other places to put that if you want to take that route.
And I don't mind smoking pipe either. I actually run, I think, 1 smoking pipe in my current build over painkillers because, I don't know, Dunwich hits you for a lot of horror. And that's kind of been a worry for me because a lot of the assets I'm running in Mark don't really have a whole lot by way of horror soak. So I think, I'm later in the campaign now, so I've got my two. I've had horses and I have a smoking pipe, and that's like all my anti-horror tech. Because what's cool about smoking pipe is you can heal the sanity. You don't have to put the damage straight on Mark. You can just put it like on, True Grit or whatever it happens to be. Yeah. Draw your card, and I don't know, it just feels pretty good.
Just pass the pipe to someone else, and it's okay.
Yes. Buff, pass. Who's your favorite ally in Mark? Who's your favorite? I'll caveat there. Who's your favorite level 0 ally?
I would say Guard Dog. Just that ability to put a damage, you're putting damage on the other enemy, and you're getting a card for Mark, and yeah, that's usually my go-to as far as the level 0s.
Yep, I would have to agree. Beat Cop looks enticing, but Mark doesn't really need the combat boost as much as like Roland or Zoe would.
Right.
And I think level 2 Beat Cop is amazing, but I would definitely take Guard Dog over level 1 Beat Cop.
Yeah.
Or level 0.
I usually would go that way. And the thing with Mark, though, is you can, potentially include both, because I think he's an investigator where you kind of have to treat your allies as fairly disposable in the long run, because you're going to be throwing damage on them and whatnot. So,
oh yeah, I mean, when your investigator's like, "Hey, throw damage on your crap," you can't really expect many to stay around very long. It was very tempting when I played The House Always Wins and we got Dr. Morgan free. Like, I had all 3 damage on him within a couple turns, and I was like, "Oh no, wait, I can't let him go. Damn it."
The thing it's amazing how much that jump to starting with 5 combat makes a difference. Like, he's able to just like annihilate stuff.
Just go. And I've also found that the Colt is far more favored to me over the 45 for a Mark deck, because he starts at that 5. It's got 6 ammo. It's lower cost. It's not that hard to get another combat boost if you need it. Oh, I love Mark.
Yeah, he's super
good design.
Yeah,
he's good people. Okay, well, God, I don't even want it. It took so Nick's subtitle for this one is "Girls Gone Wild," and I initially just cocked an eyebrow at that, going like, "What?" So, Minty Fan is in fact a girl who throws a lot of wild icons around.
Yep.
Kind of sad that it took me
accurate.
I'm ashamed that it took me as long as it did to figure out that that's what he was alluding to. I'm like, what? Minty? Anyway, so Minty Fan is the Seeker. She's the Secretary, 4 willpower, 4 intellect, 2 combat, 2 agility, assistant traded. Reaction: after an investigator at your location commits a card to a skill test, that card gains a wild icon until the end of the phase. Limit once for each investigator per round. Elder Sign effect is +1. You may choose a skill card committed to this skill test to return to its owner's hand after this test ends. 7/7 for horror or health and sanity. Deck size 30. Seeker cards 0 to 5. Neutral cards 0 to 5. Survivor cards 0 to 2. And then, of course, Analytical Mind and the King in Yellow. So how's Min been treating you? I still am not sure where I sit with her.
I used her with Mark. She was kind of the Seeker half of that tandem for me going through Carcosa, and it worked out really well. And then it made it kind of hard to figure out like how much of that was Mark, how much of it was Min, and how much was like a joint effort. So I think I need to try her in a few more different settings. But overall, I found the ability really useful. It's basically like turning every card that gets committed into one of those like double neutral skill cards or an unexpected courage or something like that. A card that you might commit for just like 1 will is all of a sudden 2 will because of the wild. So in the long run, it ends up really adding a lot to the games. I think the thing you have to think about is, one, obviously the card draw for her, so she's constantly being able to commit skill cards and keep up with that. And then the other is she's not necessarily like out of the box like a dedicated seeker like Rex, so you have to think about what you're gonna do.
No one will be though.
Yeah, no one will be. And,
I mean, no one will be and no one should be.
And Seeker has like a million tools to get there anyway, so it's not really an issue. It's just something to think about.
Yeah, I still am not sure how I feel about her ability. It's obviously cool, but kind of if you frame it in a different way, like if her ability was, once per turn, each investigator at your location gets +1 to a skill test. Mm-hmm. Which is better than her actual ability, because that would require no other committal of cards to that test. Would it be good? Just like a random +1 once per turn for each person? I'm not sure.
I think so. I mean, I feel like the difference of +1s between skills in this game is always bigger than it seems at first glance. Like the difference from 3 to 4 is big, and from 4 to 5.
Sure. So if it if you look, I have not followed kind of the probabilities of success with the different scenarios and chaos bags, but I think in general on normal or on standard, like +2 is like what, kind of somewhere between like 60 and 75% chance to succeed.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around there.
So if you're 2 up and this pushes you to 3 up, which puts you definitely higher than that, then yeah, I suppose that makes a difference. I think I've played Min just through the Carcosa box once, and man, when she gets her signature out, she is a different investigator. I think she's kind of got the old Jim syndrome here.
Yeah, her signature is one of the best and like most needed.
It's so good. So I suppose we should probably talk about it. So Analytical Mind, Between the Lines, is Min's signature asset. It's 3 cost. 2 wild icons. It's talent traded, Minty Fan deck only. Minty Fan. I'm still not sure exactly how to pronounce her name. You may commit 1 card to each skill test performed by an investigator at another location. Boom! Right there, that's huge. Mm-hmm. And then reaction after you commit exactly 1 card to a skill test. Exhaust Analytical Mind to draw a card. So all of a sudden she becomes like, in the heist movie, she's like the hacker who's on the surveillance systems, just like throwing in intel out to everyone. And she becomes so good at that point, because she's drawing through her deck. She's always replenishing these skill cards that she's throwing. Definitely a Jim syndrome here, I think.
The thing that opens up is there's potentially a build with her where you can take advantage of those seeker cards that let you grab clues from locations you're not at, and just have her kind of post up somewhere and do that kind of like hacker from the home base support type thing.
Well, yeah, now that we've got things like In the Know and what's the big one from the end of Dunwich? Deciphered Reality?
Yeah, Deciphered Reality.
I mean, she kind of could, as long as other people are out there revealing locations. She can just kind of camp and be hacker investigator, right?
Yeah, totally. I think the other thing to keep in mind with her is, because kind of if you're going to use her in multiplayer, you want to get the full value, so other people need to be committing cards often as well. I feel like that's why it worked well with Mark, because he's constantly drawing cards, so he's committing all the time, so it kind of gets full value. So I could see a situation where like the other investigators are running with like not as much draw, and they're not really committing stuff that often, and in that case it might feel like the ability's not pulling as much weight.
I like her, though. The design is cool. And I suppose we're not really talking much about the weaknesses here, but her weakness is a doozy.
Yeah, it's rough.
So, what is it? Okay, I should probably just bring it up instead of King in Yellow Act 1.
Trying to dodge the King in Yellow.
Yeah, so it 6 matching skill icons for that test. Woo!
Yeah,
that's what you need to get rid of that sucker. Now, I'm gonna love the stories about when people are chucking 6 skill icons to a test and then draw the tentacle, because that's gonna happen. This is like a tentacle summoning song.
Yeah, definitely.
And it takes up another hand slot too, so...
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's surmountable, but it's pretty bad. Especially, like, if you've got in the know out and you're kind of camped up to be that, hey, I commit 1 to everything kind of investigator, that's definitely going to slow you down. But I have found that her off class is very, very useful. Just being able to take luckies, the resourcefuls I have found to be an amazing card as long as you've got enough red in your deck to justify it. I have a couple builds where I don't include it, but overall I found it to be a really good card. I don't know. Yeah. Min seems like a decent addition to the Seeker lineup without being just like, Diet Rex.
Diet Rex. The other
Which,
Rex.
like, let's be honest, every Seeker has the oh my god, words. Has the chance of just kind of being like, oh, well, not as good as Rex. Shrug.
Yeah, I think that's
all right.
I think that's a common thing when you get like a key investigator in the Lord of the Rings. I remember that happening with a hero in a certain sphere, and then everyone gets compared to them. Mm-hmm. But the thing I do like about Min is that she adds some value to some skill cards that you might not normally include or that seem more marginal. But now that it's going to be like 2 icons, all of a sudden it's fair game.
Yep. All right, Ian, so let's move on to this next one. I would invite you to pick a card. Any card. And then read Safina Rousseau.
All right, gladly. Safina Rousseau is a rogue investigator.
Oh, let me hear that French R. Rousseau.
Rousseau.
Good enough.
Is the painter. She has 4 will, 2 intellect, 2 combat, 4 agility, artist traded, of course. Forced, when you would draw your opening hand, draw 13 cards instead. Choose up to 5 events to place beneath this card, and keep 8 cards as your opening hand, discard the rest. You cannot mulligan. So this is a replacement for the normal mulligan. Action, choose an event beneath this card and draw it. Does not provoke attacks of opportunity. Elder Sign effect, +3, you may choose an event beneath this card and draw it. She has 5 health and 9 sanity. Deck building is rogue cards, level 0 to 5, neutral cards, all of them. Mystic cards, 0 to 2.
Thoughts?
I definitely like Safina a lot. She's like one of the most interesting investigators to me. At this point for solo, I'm still trying to find like the perfect build and still tinkering with it. I think she's kind of, as far as solo goes, still needs a bit more help in the event department to be like, the thing is she can be super good or she can get like caught flat-footed, so the consistency isn't quite there yet. But once you are able to add some experience to it and get some of those higher level events, then it really takes off. And then also I think once we get more events in the card pool, it's a little bit different with multiplayer because I think you have that kind of extra support from other investigators.
Is she the first one who has both of the... Yeah, I think we kind of have come around to calling them the offensive stats, intellect and combat, whereas willpower and agility are your defensive stats. Is she the first one who has 2s in both of the offensive ones? Oh no, Agnes totally does too. That's a silly question. But Agnes has like risk mitigation and all of the mystic class cards to take advantage of her giant willpower. So what do you feel like Safina leans toward? Do you find you're kind of taking more mystic cards, or does she kind of split 50-50, or how does your level 0 build usually look?
That's a good question. I think it's pretty heavy on mystic stuff because primarily a lot of the cards you're going to use to kill enemies have to come from Mystic just because of her stat spread. Like, you can use Backstab, which is an option, but other than that, you're really relying on Shriveling as a super key card for her, as one of her, like, her main way of doing damage to enemies, again, especially in solo. And then a lot of the events that you want to take advantage of are mystic ones, like Drawn to the Flame is a big one. You can throw Uncage the Soul in there, potentially
Yes,
Blinding Light. So I don't know. I think it tends to about like 50-50 for me as far as like Rogue Mystic.
Mm-hmm. I find, and first, I have to comment on the fact, I didn't play Netrunner seriously, but I did collect it for quite a while. I kind of love how many nods are stuffed into this one card from Netrunner, because she's got like the painter motif going on, which was kind of like Kate's thing in Netrunner. She's kind of got like Andromeda's ability in a way, and I think there was another ID in Netrunner that had this specific, like you put cards underneath this ID and do things with them, so... I don't know, pretty cool there. I know Matt was a fan of Netrunner, so kind of cool to see the nods there.
Yeah, and I know that I was only loosely kind of involved in Netrunner, but I know that Andromeda was a popular one for a while just because of the ability to start with a bunch of cards, and I think Safina, that part of her ability is good too, separate from even just being able to copy stuff, is just starting with... a big hand, and being able to see a lot of your deck before you even start helps.
Excuse me. No, and it really adds to her consistency. And I think when she was spoiled, I mentioned this, but I feel like if there's ever some dirty combo between green and purple cards, like Safina is who you're going to grab it in, because getting 13 cards off the front is going to be a great way to try to see that combo early.
The biggest thing I found for Safina is she needs like willpower boosts to really help get these spells off the ground, particularly when attacking. Like, she needs the ability to go beyond 4, because, you know, most of the like kind of standard or tougher enemies are going to have at least 4. So I started with like 1 Holy Rosary, and I quickly went up to 2 for the next build, and then like any other willpower boosts that I can upgrade to are super important for her.
Yep. I feel like she's kind of in the same category for me as like Daisy. Like, you just gotta get through that first scenario with some XP, and then things are okay. Mm-hmm. Because she wants the lock picks, and those are nice and cheap. She wants, I think level 2 Blinding Light is a really good include for her. But I think the Spirit Athame is another one that I think I started with the Derringer in my level 0 deck, and then immediately just swapped that out for the Spirit Athame when I had a chance, because it just does good things for her.
It does. Who are you running as her main ally in that? That's a interesting question.
Well, it's the only time I've seriously played her was standalone. Mm-hmm. I haven't actually done a campaign with her yet.
Okay.
No, wait, that's a lie. I have one campaign with her, and I think I did it differently. I ran the Initiate in the... No, did I run the Initiate? No, I thought about it. Never mind. I've just been running Manatee in both builds, because why not? Especially when you're kind of working around with this extra action to potentially grab a card from your, from underneath your Investigator. Do you ever regret taking the Manatee? I just never do.
Yeah, I have been running Alyssa for like the +1 intellect to get up to 3, especially in solo. But I think I might experiment with the Manatee for that reason, because there were a lot of times I came up against that kind of like limited actions. Like, I need an action to draw this event, but I'm gonna not have actions to do what I want to do. So I'm gonna try. The reason I was trying to avoid it too is because she tends to be very spendy, like, because she's playing a lot of events, like, you're spending resources all the time.
Yeah.
But I think, you are in Rogue, so you have ways to get around that and generate resources, and Uncage the Soul can help with that, so I think I'm going to probably switch to Manatee. When in doubt, always go Manatee.
Yeah, it's always a good fallback, if nothing else. What resource generation are you running in her? Because I kind of puzzled over that for a while, because she doesn't gel well with burglary. No. I think I ended up with Lone Wolf, and I think that ended up being about it. Then I ran, obviously, Quiches and Uncage the Soul.
Yep, pretty much the same for me. Just Low and Wef and Uncage the Soul and the quiches. I mean, that's about all you can really run with her until you get to upgrades, and then maybe you want to get a little weird and go with the hot streaks.
Yeah, I was about to say, do you ever just go straight hot streak? Do you think that's a good like late campaign buy for her? Do you buy it early? I don't know about hot streak.
That's a good question. I haven't gotten far enough in a campaign with her to really come to that conclusion, because usually the early buys are the more kind of foundational stuff like Charisma or Streetwise or something like that. But I think I would, but I don't know if it would be like an early buy. It might be kind of midway through the campaign, I'm thinking.
She's fun. I still don't know where she sits on the power level continuum, but I do enjoy Safina.
Yeah. The only reason I wouldn't buy it earlier is because I feel like she does spend a lot of resources, but I do get... Because I'm running like, 15 events in her to really make sure I get enough. But yeah. I feel like there's kind of a few bubble events that are like, it's not the best, but I'm putting it there because it's an event. So I feel like I don't want to spend that XP on something that's like a sure gamble or something that's really going to up the event game a bit more.
Mm-hmm. I feel like every time we get a low-cost event in either neutral, mystic, or rogue, it's going to be like, oh, Safina. Mm-hmm. How does that work for you? What's the... is it Think on Your Feet is the rogue one? I always mix up Think on Your Feet and Bait and Switch.
Yeah, Think on Your Feet is the rogue one.
Is that a good one for her, or is that fast? So, like, if it's stuck under her, that's not a good thing to have. That's fast.
That one, yeah, that's basically when an enemy would spawn, then you dodge out of the way.
Yeah, okay. Never mind then. Bad one. All right, well, anything else to mention on Safina Russa?
I mean, we mentioned it going through, but basically her special card is the Painted World, which lets you copy an event, and that definitely, I mentioned it on the last podcast, but with like Drawn to the Flame, all of a sudden I'm playing like 4 Drawn to the Flames in a game instead of 2, because you're able to get that added value out of the events that are good.
Again, low-cost event in Mystic. Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful Safina card, especially since she suffers so much for investigating, especially in the early campaign.
Yeah. The good thing is she has that kind of high will that hopefully if you're drawing treacheries with those Drawn to the Flames, then you can deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I do believe... one thing, and Kenji's noting here, I think we've talked about it in the in past episodes. I think Scott has clarified in his rules segment, but Painted World is kind of an odd little card. And,
it is.
Unfortunately, though, Safina deserves points because she can take Delve Too Deep. Copying Delve Too Deep with Painted World is generally not a good idea unless you're playing a troll deck, in which case I think Safina probably stands the chance of being the best troll investigator in the game. Because if you copy Delve Too Deep, it becomes a copy while you're playing it, but then when you add Painted World to the victory display, then it becomes the Painted World again, and it has no victory points. So
yeah. You can still play it normally.
Yes, and I still think it's worth putting a Delve Too Deep underneath her at the beginning of the game, just because then it's like it's always in your back pocket.
Yeah, because I mean, potentially that's the downside of Delve Too Deep is you draw it when you can't play it, or you don't have it when you need it. But with her, you're pretty much guaranteed that you can wait to the perfect moment to play it.
Exactly. Yep. I really enjoy Safina. She's the first rogue to really turn my head. And that's only partially because she's also Mystic.
Yeah, she has that going for her.
All right, well, let's move on then to the Energizer Bunny, or Akachi Onyele, who, you know what, I was kind of lukewarm on her to begin with, but she's really become near and dear to my heart in the Mystic lineup. So Akachi Onyele is the shaman. She has a 5 willpower, 2 intellect, 3 combat, 3 agility, has the sorcerer trait, which is the best trait. Your assets with uses charges enter play with 1 additional charge on them. And her Elder Sign effect is +1, add a charge to an asset with uses charges you control. And then she has 6 health and 8 sanity. Her deck size is 30. She takes Mystic cards 0 to 5, Neutral cards 0 to 5, cards with uses charges 0 to 4, and then Occult cards level 0. And then, of course, her signature weakness and Spirit Speaker. So she's really the first kind of I'm really using the air bunny ear quotes when I say this, but she's really the first pure mystic that we've gotten so far, in that she doesn't have a distinct off class or the splash that Jim has access to.
Right. She's like the mystic mark in that way.
Yes, exactly. Because I think the only the only occult card we have right now is the Archaic Glyphs.
It is, yeah.
And do we have any non-mystic cards that use charges? I don't believe those exist yet.
I don't recall offhand.
That might be a good thing to investigate, but I don't believe those exist yet.
That might have been some good research for the show.
Yeah, possibly. Who does pre-production?
Yeah,
Come
who does
on.
that?
But yeah, so I think right now she's pretty pure mysticky, because even though she's got chances to take other cards from other classes with these specific criteria, there are really none that exist. So, but that said, I mean, the mystic kind of pantheon of cards really, I feel like it's decent enough to stand on its own now. Out of the core, it felt really good that Agnes had the survivor stuff to back up her mystic stuff, but I feel like you can lean on purple pretty hard now and be okay.
Yeah, you can, and I felt similar to you, where I was lukewarm at first, not because I didn't think she would be good, but just the ability wasn't as flashy as the other Carcosa Gators, and I was worried about being restricted to only the Mystic cards. But yeah, like you said, it turns out that they have a good selection of tools already. She has, like we were talking about with Mark, she has the 5 in the stat she really needs, in this case willpower, which lets her just do a ton of work, especially if you get a rosary out or whatever else, and you're doing tests at like 7 or 8.
And she's like rocking 3s in 2 out of the other 3 stats she has. So
yeah, but
it's not bad.
There was one case where I was fighting an enemy, redacted name here, with Akachi. I hit with the last charge of Shriveling to get 2 damage, and then I didn't have anything less, but guess what? She has the 3 fists, which was enough to just punch him in the face and finish it off.
I also think her staff looks immensely like Rafiki's staff from The Lion King. Just throwing that out there. I don't know if that's like a specific style of shaman staff, but it's definitely evocative for me. Yeah, so, and I think the Energizer Bunny that Nick threw down, I think that's pretty apt. Like, she's basically just making all of your charges spells more efficient. Mm-hmm. Like, I would definitely run Scrying in Akachi, probably up to, 3 or 4 player. Just because 1 for 4 charges is pretty good. And then with Spirit Speaker, it becomes even better. So let's cover Spirit Speaker really quickly here. So Spirit Speaker, Envoy of the Alusi. It's her signature asset. It's 2 cost, has willpower, intellect, and wild pip. Ritual traded, Akachi Onyele deck only, and then free triggered action, exhaust Spirit Speaker, choose an asset you control with use as charges. Either return that asset to your hand, or move all charges from that asset to your resource pool as resources and discard that asset. So yeah, I feel like this is a really good signature card for her ability, because it's perfect. So you get to recur those spells that are keeping you in the game and keeping you using your willpower, as opposed to trying to lean on something that she's not as good at. Or, like I said, with Scrying, or I think maybe like with Alchemical Concoction. What's the... Alchemical Transmutation?
Transmutation, I believe, yeah.
Yeah. they enter play with 4 charges on them. You paid 1, and then boom. I mean, it's basically like a quiche. It turns any of those 1-cost, 3-charge spells into a quiche.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah, something like Song of the Dead, you pay 2, but it comes in with 6 charges. You could potentially bring it back for a gain of 4. It's not bad at all.
Yep. So, God, I don't know what there is to say. She's just very mysticky. So everything we've ever said about mystic cards, that just all applies to Akachi. I think the only thing of note when building with her is I tend to run, probably pretty intuitively here, I tend to run lighter on events and obviously favor the assets that have charges because that's kind of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing is that she's replaced Skids now as the investigator that I draw the Elder Sign most frequently. Ooh. I've hit with that thing like 3 times per game. I don't know what it is, and it's a really good Elder Sign effect too because you put another charge on something. So she is truly the Energizer Bunny. So I don't know how much that's affecting my affection for her right now, but.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said for Elder Sign effects that don't just help you win more, that actually do something. Like, I think Skids still has, like, the one notable thing about Skids that's still in the top tier is his Elder Sign ability.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Skids.
I do tend to run, I go back and forth on the Arcane Initiate depending on which Mystic I'm playing or which investigator with Mystic access, but I definitely use the Initiate with Akachi because you do want those spells out quickly, and she is reliant on kind of those spells to do the fighting and other stuff, so it helps a ton.
And I have kind of the build that I have for solo right now actually runs Moonlight Ritual, and one of my first upgrades is Blood Pact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I'm kind of coming around to that card a bit. It's like, I'm always glad I have it when the Witching Hour rolls around. And then, for other times when I draw that Moonlight Ritual, I'm like, all right, let's go a little hog wild, baby. So, yeah. Anyway, Akachi's fun. If you like purple cards, you should play her.
For sure.
All right, so let's move it on to our last guy, where one man's trash is, alas, another man's recovered asset, I guess.
I feel like in alternate subtitles, everyone loves Yorick because we've been going on and on about him over the past few podcasts.
I mean, he's really good.
He is.
So why don't you read him for us?
Sure. So William York is the Gravedigger, survivor investigator with 3 will, 2 intellect, 4 combat, and 3 agility. Has the Warden trait. Reaction: after you defeat an enemy, play an asset from your discard pile, paying its cost, limit once per round. Elder Sign effect +2. If this test is successful, return 1 card from your discard pile to your hand. 8 health, 6 sanity, and his deck building is all the survivor cards, all the neutral cards, and guardian cards level 0 to 2.
Also notable is he enables you to constantly make Hamlet references, which is a win for me, because Hamlet's definitely my favorite Shakespeare work. I think it was Kenji who posited that if you run a really tight cost curve, you can call him Poor Yorick.
Mm-hmm. I think that would work.
And I think one that kind of focuses on killing enemies can definitely be I slew them well, Horatio.
Someone should play. Whoever's playing Yorick for the Iron Man should just memorize like 3 to 4 Shakespearean monologues to bust out when they need to.
Yep. Oh yeah, and then I was like, oh yeah, and if you put Wendy with him as a 2-handed campaign, it can be Alas and Poor Yorick. All right, works. I'm done now.
Yeah.
So I know we talked about him kind of at length last time, but Yorick's really good.
He is really good. And
he
fun.
Kills things.
So much fun.
Yeah, and he's got, between a shovel and Look What I Found, and what there was like one other trick that I was playing with him to get clues. Oh yeah, I was Red Gloved Man, because hey, why not be able to like kill an enemy for your first action and then have the Red Gloved Man back in play for 2 cost, because Yorick.
Mm-hmm.
He's so good.
Yeah, I mean, he got those tools in the same box, the lantern and shovel, and then, there's just so many possibilities, like recycling guard dogs or baseball bat if you're going that route and it breaks. There's just a lot of potential there.
I initially thought baseball bat was going to be really good for him, but I think the timing of the breaking and the enemy getting defeated kind of makes it a little less good. I've been, oddly enough, just happily running 2 knives in this deck, and I've never looked back. But I know you and I kind of talked about the differences. I think my Yorick build runs 2 knives and 2 shovels, and those are the only weapons.
Yeah, I think it's part of what makes Yorick interesting as well, that you can take him in a few different directions. I'm using Bandolier for the first time as like a key card in Yorick, so he'll have the baseball bat.
Whoa!
And then the shovel or something else. So if the baseball bat breaks, he can still get a boost from the shovel and get the bat back. So hasn't really been an issue playing it solo, but it is something to think about for sure.
Yeah,
especially since I don't think it's a spoiler to say that there are more skulls in the Carcosa bag than there were in the past cycles.
Yes. I think you'll see that pretty quickly. That's like spoiling the menu screen on a video game. I think we're pretty okay.
Yeah. So that's something to think about when making that decision for sure. And speaking of Elder Sign effects, his is so good. So
unbelievably good. Especially when you're kind of building for all these things that discard or go away anyway. It's just like, all right. So what are some of your favorite assets in Yorick to recur?
I mentioned the guard dog. I feel like this has been the box of the dog for me because of Mark.
I love it that the dog is like so high in the meta now. It makes me happy.
Because it's always been a good card, but I didn't use it as much in Dunwich. But because of these investigators in Carcosa, I'm using it a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, his tools like the shovel and lantern. What else am I recurring a lot?
I actually haven't tried the lantern out in him yet. Is the 1 damage pretty okay? Like testless damage seems like it's pretty good in general, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I've used it a couple times. I'd say it's not as key as the shovel for sure, and it's not something that, like, you could replace the lantern with something else, and it's not going to be like a blow to York, but it comes in handy sometimes.
Well, the other thing was, like, it only gives you -1 to the shroud, which, if you're on a 1 shroud location, great. Now all of a sudden it becomes kind of an auto succeed unless you draw the tentacle. But on Yorick specifically, like, are you ever using that to investigate? Like, I don't feel like that's enough of an investigate tool for him.
No, I ran York solo through Carcosa, and most of the investigating was through Lucky, and look what I found. Surprise, surprise.
So, okay. I'm trying to think what else I've been... Obviously, the shovel is, like, tailor-made for him. Surprise, surprise. I mentioned Red Gloved Man. He's spendy, but with Bury Them Deep, and, maybe if you pair with someone who's running Delve Too Deep. Oh, like all the... Wow, I hope that remains a theme where all the player cards that grant experience have the word deep in them. I'm trying to think.
I mean,
he's so hardy too, because you can recur things, like you toss, I don't know, 1 Elder Sign amulet in there, and all of a sudden, if horror is an issue, you can start just churning through that thing.
Mm-hmm. Or the
leather coats,
infinite coats.
Yes, the coat within a coatception.
Yeah, he just has like a wardrobe somewhere with just endless leather coats.
He just keeps taking off layers, and somehow never, like, no one's ever seen Yorick's t-shirt.
Like when you first see him, he's like, looks like 3 people because he's just covered in coats.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like he's just really fun. Is Survivor? Sorry, words coalescing here. Is Survivor not anyone's favorite? Wow, I can't put this sentence together. Is there anyone out there for whom Survivor is not their second favorite class, at least?
I don't know. Yeah, if it's not their favorite, then a lot of people... It's definitely my second favorite, for sure.
Right. Like, I tend to like a little bit of everything, but, you know, I really like Mystic and, like, Survivor's right up next there, too. They're just so fun.
Yeah, I think it's because all the Survivor investigators do something different, and their abilities are all very interesting, very thinky. You have to think about what you're going to do. There's definitely the strategy with York of, like, well, you know, I can commit this card with the thought to skill test with the thought that later on a subsequent test, because you can't do it on the same test, but on a later test he can kind of get that back with his ability.
Yep. So York, he's good. Play him. I don't know. I can probably end every investigator rundown with that, but yeah. So let's move it on to the player cards themselves. Any Guardian cards you'd call special attention to?
Guardian.
I feel like all of them are pretty solid.
Yeah.
So the Guardian cards, we got the Colt, we got True Grit, Let Me Handle This, and Ever Vigilant, which is the one that lets you play a bunch of assets and reduce their cost. Yeah, so True Grit, I feel like is really good in multiplayer. It's really good in Mark specifically. I'm not sure if any other Guardian takes that card, though. Maybe York, because that's another thing he can pull back out when it's spent, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it might also depend on player count. If maybe you're playing with more players and you want to do the tanky thing and take damage from other people, but
I suppose that requires a streak of altruism that not everyone has. I do love Let Me Handle This, though. I know I gushed about this when it was first released, but this is like perfect, you know, again, rabbit ears here. Treachery cancellation or encounter card cancellation, but it's like super not. It's just like, gimme. Mm-hmm. And I find I use it a lot because the fact that you get +2 to the skill, if it's making you test a skill, like most of the time that's just good.
Yeah,
and it puts you at a much better chance to succeed at whatever that test is than most of the time whoever drew it.
We talked about the Colt a little bit with Mark, which is definitely good with him, because the interesting thing about the Colt is it doesn't give you a boost to your combat. It's just the damage, which is fine for Mark and potentially even some of the other Guardians. That
it's kind of like Shriveling, where it doesn't give you, level 0 Shriveling doesn't give you a boost. It just gives you the damage.
Because it gets you up to 6 ammo starting and only 3 costs, so that's a lot of value there.
Mm-hmm. And for most enemies, I mean, even swinging at a base 5 is fine. Mm-hmm. It's generally pretty okay. How about Seeker cards? Anything notable there? I've been getting a lot of use out of Fieldwork.
Yeah, I think that's the one that stands out the most.
My God, like this to me seems like it's setting us up for the Monterey Jack investigator as well.
He has to come at some point.
He has to, and it's going to be so fun because he's going to be like mobile as hell, and then he moves in, he does cool stuff, and he swings through, and he's on his way.
Maybe if we get a Nefren Ka Egypt campaign, and then you can live out all your mummy dreams.
Don't tempt me, Ian. I'll get too excited about that. But yeah, I feel like this has been good in decent in Lola, because that Cluvery build tends to kind of hover around Seeker most of the time anyway, unless I'm doing something specific. So I can usually trigger this when I'm in Cluver mode. It's really great in Rex, because
For sure.
moving to the location, get +2 skill to that next test you do, probably grab your extra clue because of it, and not have to waste skill cards or resources or whatever it happens to be. Maybe not as much in Daisy. Unless she's coming in to swing with willpower on a spell or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a good card.
Yeah, the interesting part about it is that it doesn't just boost the intellect, it's whatever skill, which helps a lot. It's not just for the investigate. I remember I had it in Lola. I was playing Lola Safina through Carcosa, and there was one particular test that was like at a difficulty 6, and both of them were going to struggle to get there, and I was able to get there through Fieldwork, thankfully, but it took a lot of finagling of getting a location, because it was later in the game, which is sometimes an issue, that as you get later in the game, obviously there's not as many clues around. So it was a matter of like letting a particular enemy come to me that I didn't want to, because then it could get to a location with a clue on it. So there's lots of things to think about. But yeah, I think in general it's worth having around.
In the Know is another one I'm gonna kind of give a nod to. I didn't know how it seemed interesting. I didn't know quite how to feel about this card, but now playing it in I know we mentioned earlier, Min could make cool use out of this and just be like camp down, throw skill tests, investigate elsewhere, kind of seeker. I've also played this in Rex because it's really fun. It's really fun to camp down on like a 4-shroud location and then just go investigate the 1-shroud location that's also been revealed. Easily grab the clue off the 1-shroud location, and then you're probably going to succeed by 2, so then you'd swipe a clue off of your current location too. So fun stuff to be done there, I think.
Yeah, I definitely like this one more than I can't remember the name, the event where you investigate a connecting location.
Seeking Answers? Searching for the Truth, something like that?
Yeah, I think it's Seeking Answers. Because this one is any revealed location in play, and you get to use it multiple times, that it just opens up a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, and I think it's another cool, because at least in multiplayer, if your Seeker's kind of focusing on being Clover, mobility has been a thing they need, and Pathfinder's been a great solution. Shortcut's a pretty decent solution, but I feel like this kind of works in lieu of high mobility, where you can just be like, all right, well, I'll investigate there now.
Yeah, and in multiplayer, you could potentially have like, the rogue player who has a bunch of actions to spare, just like plow ahead and go through these locations and reveal them, so that the in the know seeker can get those clues.
Or toss you a double or nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's goodness to be had there. Moving on through the Survivor cards. I know I've already raved about the Shovel, because that's awesome. Resourceful's really good if you're running enough red to justify it. Really, really good.
Yeah.
I've pulled Look What I Found back with that card so many times.
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, it's pretty much either going to be used to grab Look What I Found or Lucky a lot of the times, but that's worth it on its own. And is this the most versatile? I mean, other than the ones with wild icons, of course, but this has 3 different icons on it. It has to be the most versatile skill that I can think of.
Yeah, I think as far as specifically skill cards go, I think this has the widest variety of icons outside of wilds.
And this is good. This is good with Min as well, because she's getting that extra wild on there.
Yeah, the only thing I found is I think I tend to run my Min builds a little bit seeker heavy, because surprise, yellow cards are good. So I've left Resourceful out a couple times, but definitely if you've got enough red in the deck, this is a very, very good card. How about Rogues? Rogues had a very interesting set of cards. I'm curious to see what you think about them.
So as far as rogue cards, they are interesting. I think the one that stands out the most for me is Lockpicks, which is the answer to the long sought question of like, how are rogues going to investigate? Because they
needed it so badly.
They had no special investigate cards, whereas all the other classes had something at least. So this lets rogues, exhaust the lockpicks to investigate and add the agility to their skill value for that. So, say you have a 3 and 3 with Jenny, all of a sudden you're investigating with 6, or a 4 and 2, you're investigating with 6. So just does a lot. The other cards are a bit more situational in a way. I think that the star of those ones for me is Sleight of Hand. Because of... So for those who don't have the card in front of them, that's being able to play it to put an item asset into play from your hand, and at the end of the turn the asset goes away. So for the Lord of the Rings players, this is like a sneak attack for your item assets.
It sure is.
And there's a lot of uses for that, though. There's the flashlight use, so you pop in the flashlight and, investigate a couple times, or even 3 times, because this is fast, or potentially more since you're a rogue. I think it makes the Derringer better, because you can just carry the Derringers around and just sneak them into place, so you're getting more bullets, more uses out of them. So, and I think this is going to get
actually
better.
A pretty solid skids card, right? Because now all of a sudden your kind of expensive Guardian weapons just like slide it out of your pocket, and all of a sudden you got a 1 cost 45 for a turn.
Yeah, and when you upgrade to those like Chicago typewriter or something, then it gets ridiculous.
I feel like this is going to be a good card once we have. I feel like we're kind of getting pushed into an item heavy meta, at least based on the kind of the cards we've seen. We've got Joey the Rat. We've got Attorney Urkel coming out that works with item cards. I feel like there's going to be an item heavy meta that we're coming into here, and I'm kind of okay to explore that space.
Yeah.
And in that space, Sleight of Hand is amazing.
Daring Maneuver, I'm glad it exists to prop up the like +2 success deck. That when you play Daring Maneuver, you get +2 skill value when you would succeed, but I think I still have to play with it more, and my suspicion is it needs some more pieces to be a true deck type.
I look forward to someone figuring that one out, though.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it'll be... I don't know. I'm always so anti-win more, but it still seems like it could be fun if you've got enough things that trigger off of it. Especially if you can, like, recur Daring Maneuver. Is there anything that can pull that specifically out right now of your discard pile, or is it just, like, one and done?
For rogues, I'm trying to think of... Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Oh, well. Maybe someday. Recursion's a dangerous thing, though. Survivor's already really good because of how much recursion they have, so maybe that's just going to be their thing. So moving into the Mystic cards, some interesting ones here as well. I think Uncage the Soul is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've kind of talked about it. Probably replaces Quiche in spell-heavy builds or ritual-heavy builds, if that ever becomes a thing. But you can definitely run it in addition to, because those willpower icons are never going to go unused. Astral Travel is exactly something Mystic needed to increase mobility. It's expensive. I don't think I've ever run more than one of in a deck, but I'm usually glad I have it.
Yeah, I had one of as well.
Alchemical Transmutation seems interesting. Obviously, more econ is good, but I feel like getting this in the same set of cards as we got Uncage the Soul kind of reduces its stock a bit.
It does, and I do like it. I like that it exists, but I haven't quite used it yet. It kind of comes down to Investigator, and thinking about kind of the way I think about it is like you're going to test will and get a maximum of 3, which is like an emergency quiche. So the question is really you need to ask yourself is, do you need more resources than quiche can give you? Because if you just need the 2 doses of 3, then you might as well just play quiche for the guaranteed 3 resources.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I'm going to continue to play around with it, but it's been very light experimentation so far. We'll get into the heavy stuff in college. And then, yes, I mentioned it earlier, Spirit Athame is really good. I love it in Daisy. I love it in Safina.
Mm-hmm.
I think I took it in Akachi. Just to give her something to swing at a rat and not have to waste a shriveling charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's the good aspect of it is you get the +2 skill value for the test, but you also can get a +2 fight, which helps.
Yep.
Because sometimes mystics can be dependent on the shrivelings, so this gives you another tool to fight with.
All right. So, and oddly enough, we don't have any neutral cards in this, neutral cards in Path to Carcosa. We've got obviously we've got Lola and all the signatures, but no actual neutral cards. So, that's kind of cool. I don't know. We got Kukri in Dunwich, and we all know how that went. So,
yeah, I think Lola took up all the neutral space.
That's probably okay. more investigators, please. I love exploring deck building space. Yeah. All right, so we'll probably skip, like I said, talking about the scenarios to next time, because we managed to turn that into an hour-and-a-half conversation. Good on us. Surprise, surprise, Ian and I can dive deep into cards. Yeah. So, that said, let's move it on into a hotline call that we got that actually kind of relates to what we're talking about here. So let's see if technology will avail itself to my will today. Give me just one moment here.
Hey guys, this is Brennan Hilgendorf calling. I was previously the winner of the Marie Lameau contest. And my question for you guys is, well, first off, I'm getting my copy of Carcosa tomorrow in the mail from King Covenant. Super excited about it. Can't wait to go through all the cards and see all the new stuff that's coming. My question for you guys is, what is the one card from Carcosa that you are most excited to add to your pre-existing decks? Looking forward to hearing what you all have to say. Have a good one. Bye.
Okay. Sure. It works now when the stakes are low, guys, but when I want to try to time a song interruption, like, everything fails! All right, well, whatever. I'm over it, I promise. So, if you had to narrow it down to one card from Carcosa that is like, ooh, that goes really well in my X deck, what would it be?
That's a tough one. I mean, my first instinct would be to say lockpicks in pretty much any of my rogue decks. That's the one that stands out to me first.
Yeah, I kind of gotta have to go with Uncage the Soul, because I know we already talked about it, but Mystic has been pretty light on econ, resource generating effects, and if you're running heavy spells, that's wonderful. It's better than Quiche, assuming you have enough spells to play it reliably. So, yeah. Honorable mentions, though, I think... I don't know. I like the Gravedigger's Shovel in investigators that maybe... that could take Fire Axe, but maybe don't want to hover around 0 resources.
Mm-hmm.
Because Gravedigger's Shovel gives you a nice fight boost for a fight test you might want to do, even though it's not extra damage. And then just testless clues. There are very few investigators who don't want that.
So one we didn't talk about at all is Archaic Glyphs, which is like the strange solution of this cycle. So how are you feeling about that one? Is it like still the same excitement of Strange Solution, or is it more like, oh, I'll wait to see what it ends up being?
You know, I'm actually in that latter camp. Like, I really like how Strange Solution was implemented, but the fact that I had to put Strange Solution in my deck to begin with, and then didn't know that I had to spend the 4 experience and then replace Strange Solution in my deck, technically to upgrade. Because, yeah, I had to cheat to do that, because as soon as I discovered the solution, I replaced that card with other cards that I upgraded to. So I am in the wait and see camp on Archaic Glyphs. I'm excited to see what it does, but I'm going to see what it does before I commit to putting it in. Because deck space is getting tight, yo.
It is. I'm in the wait and see camp as well, which, like, strange. And I feel like one of the reasons I bring it up is because I haven't seen a ton of chatter about it compared to Strange Solution. I think partially because we know kind of what it's going to be this time around. Or at least we think we know. But the other issue for me is just that we'll talk about this next episode when we talk about the scenarios, but there's a bit of a difficulty spike in Carcosa. And so I'm not loving the idea of spending like 3 actions and 3 cards worth to activate this thing. Like, maybe if we find a scenario in the cycle that has a bit more breathing room, I might get around to doing it. But right now, I'm kind of leaving it on the shelf.
Yeah, Carcosa kind of offers no time for thumb twiddling.
Mm-hmm.
None at all. So yeah, I'll comment when we see what it does. Right now, I'm just hopefully optimistic. All right, so I think that then moves us on to another voicemail that we got. I'm still not quite sure how I feel about it, so I'm just gonna play it and put it out there, and we can react, I suppose.
I think it'd be cool if they had, like, an Arkham Horror expansion full of, like, the guys nobody likes. Like, yeah, sure, you can have, like, time and space, and the spooky squid guy, but who needs that when you have, like, a fat dude without a head who's got, like, mouths on his hands? Or, like, an elephant guy who drinks blood? That's what the people want, you know? Just give it to them. Give it to us, the people.
I mean, I don't disagree strongly. I don't know that I agree overwhelmingly, but, definitely, I'm definitely a fan of non-conventional underdoggy type characters.
Sure, we need more elephant heads in the
investigators. Yeah, let's get like elephant hand ally maybe before we dip the toe in the investigator space.
This is what getting into the edibles does for you kids.
No, okay, so I have to kind of bring this one around too. So our Google voicemail box that we run the hotline out of gives us kind of voice to text transcripts, so we can actually kind of preview these voicemails before we listen to them. But it's an imperfect technology, and sometimes the transcripts we get are hilarious. So this one came in. Let me read you the transcript. So this is what Google gave us. I think it'd be cool if they had, like, Arkham Pork Spanish in full, like, guys nobody likes. Yeah, sure, you can have, like, time and space to smoke weed guy. But who needs dad? Would you have, like, a fat dude without heads, got, like, miles on his hands, like an elephant guy who creaks school? That's what the people want. You know, this is give it to the people. So I read that transcript. I'm like, oh my god, Google gave us the best weird call ever. There's no way the real call could be weirder than the transcript, and I was definitely wrong.
Yeah, you were wrong on that one.
So yeah. Anyway, thank you, caller. I appreciate the non-conventional opinion, and I look forward to elephant who drinks blood investigator guy. Mm-hmm. Vampire Ganesh, I guess. Whatever that's going to end up being.
Sounds like a mystic, I think.
So, I think then we can move it on in to a little bit of... oh, God. No, never mind. We can't move to Tentacle Time yet. I have a thing to do.
Yes, you do.
So, we got a 5-star review where the reviewer, who I believe to be Josh from our Discord and just from the community in general, gave it to me to read as Marlon Brando. So I'm going to just go ahead and assume that Marlon Brando means Godfather Marlon Brando and not like crazy, like Ian said, crazy coked out Dr. Moreau, Island of Dr. Moreau Brando. So here we go. And I apologize. This is going to be awful. These guys are great, and they can't shut up, and in the best of ways. I look forward to each episode as they come out. They've worked to build a community and provide both strategy and excellent commentary on the game. Also, Diana Stanley is over... Sorry, that one just kind of sticks in my throat. I can't get that one out. So again, sorry. My wife just walked in the room. And you guys have to understand, my wife lives with me, so her tolerance for weird shit is pretty high. The face she gave me after that one. That was pretty priceless. Okay. So, apologies again. That was pretty awful, but you know, that's what we promised. And Ian's got a good one for next time. I'm excited.
No, I don't. I don't know what you're talking about.
So then let's move it on into Tentacle Time. Ian, what has been grabbing you?
Well, in addition to all the usual stuff, I've been really caught up in because there's a brand new Star Trek show on the air. So if you're interested in my extended thoughts on Star Trek Discovery, you can tune into the latest episode of the Great Company podcast, which is usually a Lord of the Rings podcast. But we dedicated the last episode to discussing Discovery. So even if you don't play Lord of the Rings, you can listen to that if you're curious. But short answer is I like it.
You should have titled it, that episode, The A Gray Team.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yes.
So it's good?
Yeah.
Like, I know you're kind of like me, where you just generally like to like things, even though I know the internet kind of tends to take the opposite tack. But it lives up to a Trekkie scrutiny.
I mean, I would say so. There's tons of people on the internet who would disagree with me on that, but that's the internet for you. But yeah,
that's the internet.
Yeah, generally I'm the kind of person who something has to work to make me actively hate it, as opposed to like hating stuff and then something has to work to make me like it. So overall, I think it stays true to kind of what I like about Trek, and it's also very different because this is like 2017. It's like compared to 2005 when the last Star Trek show went off the air. Like, TV is so different now that
yeah, for sure,
that it's like inevitable that any new Trek show is going to be different unless it like actively tries to like capture like the nostalgic feel or something, which this one is not.
How's the production value? Are the special effects pretty good?
Oh yeah, this is like movie quality pretty much, is kind
nice.
of like a lot of TV is these days. They're pumping a bunch of money into it, so I'm just hoping it sticks around and then it makes enough money for CBS to feel like it deserves to keep going, because they are spending money on it.
That's good. Yeah, Star Trek it's one that it's pathos, mythos, like what would you call the kind of realm, the biosphere of Star Trek? It's something I'd always know that I would enjoy, but I've never dipped farther into it than just enjoying watching TNG.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know the world is way deeper than that, but
yeah. Someone is asking in the chat, Climbable Fungus on our Discord, whether I like the Orville. So the Orville is a science fiction show created by Seth MacFarlane of Family Guy fame. And the short answer is I like that one as well. Surprise, surprise. That one is... What surprised me about that is because it's Seth MacFarlane, I was expecting it to just be kind of like Family Guy in space, or like where they did the... I forgot what they were called, where they did like the Star Wars parody things in the Family Guy universe.
Something dark side.
So I was expecting that, but I was actually surprised. They do have kind of the... like typical Family Guy style jokes in there, but I was actually surprised how like Star Trek and sci-fi it is. Like, it turns out Seth MacFarlane's like a huge Trekkie, and he brought on a bunch of like former Trek people to work on the show, and the sci-fi aspects of it are cool. It's not like, oh, this is the best show of all time, but it's something I enjoy watching. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad because it's like, if I suppose Star Wars has something like that. Rebels has gotten really good reviews, even though I haven't gotten into that yet. If Star Wars put out a live action, and I don't know why the animation stops me. I enjoyed Clone Wars, but for some reason I'm less excited about an animated Star Wars thing than I am about like if Star Wars put out a live action TV series after all these years.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
The expectation would be high, so I'm glad that for you it was not dashed.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with Star Trek is it's like of course there are Star Trek movies, but it's like its true home is television, so it's good to have it back there where it should be and get something different than the Abrams movies.
Which basically feel like Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. Made by the guy who's like, I don't really like Star Trek, I like Star Wars.
I'm sure no nerd on the internet was upset about that.
No, not at all.
I bet everyone took that news with composure and grace. Yeah, so for my part, I'm still playing a fair amount of Destiny 2. I've been testing my Arkham Knights deck, and those two activities have kind of been taking up the majority of what remains of my free time nowadays. Then I suppose the other thing that it bears mentioning is this is basically, I feel like I have to issue a public apology at this point. So L5R has released officially worldwide. I think I mentioned it on this podcast. It's something that I was kind of actively avoiding the hype train for. I do love me some Thrones, mostly for Melee, so my curiosity was piqued when L5R was announced, because it kind of seems kind of Throne-esque, just in a different setting and kind of some cool differences. the fact that they came out of the box and it's purely a 2-player game without a multiplayer variant hurt. Because if it came out with like something Melee-esque, that would have been a big seller for me. Because it's just rare that I play a competitive card game with just one other person. Most of the time, if I'm with other people across the table and we're not playing something co-op, there's more than one other person. So anyway, that all said, I've been really crabby about the fact that, I want to try it and just give it a go because it seems like a really solid game, but it was friggin' sold out at Gen Con, and FFG's thing lately has been like, hey, let's hype this thing, and then you can't buy it because we didn't produce enough. So I've been really grumpy about it up to this point, but I will publicly admit that I clearly was wrong about production on L5R. They really stepped it up for this one. On release weekend, the little generalist board game store at my mall had shelf stock of L5R.
Wow.
So I don't know if that's just an artifact of it being a place that no one would think to look for L5R, or whether it's just there's enough product on the shelves. I'm leaning latter because of everything else I've heard from other places, but anyway, so I was wrong. I'm glad I was wrong. I bought 2 cores, probably more than I should have, to test the game out, but let's be real. It's an LCG. I'm probably going to play it.
The inevitable happened.
Yeah, I fought it hard. I fought it valiantly, but whatever.
See, I'm super happy they didn't have it at Gen Con because I played it there and I was like, oh, this game is so good. And if it had been
the
there,
game is very solid.
I would have bought it right away. But since it wasn't, I've had months to think about it and I'm like, So I've decided not to get into it, mainly because of where I'm at, the area I'm at. Like, the game stores are like super Magic heavy, like exclusively, so there's not really people to play with. If there was, I'd probably think about getting into it.
Well, yeah, and it takes time and effort to try to build up a play group too. So if you don't have kind of the extra capacity for that, then it's kind of,
I definitely don't.
It's kind of tough.
Yeah.
I know you don't. I was actually going to question whether you knew you didn't.
That's always a question.
So anyway, I Clan Unicorn for the win. I always seem to pick the janky ass faction that no one's figured out yet. So going strong there.
Nice.
But purple cards are always awesome, and like for real. The Unicorn Clan, and this is really oversimplifying the lore because I'm not that huge into it, so I can't get any more complex. But the Unicorn Clan is basically like the Dothraki and Rohan mashed together in feudal Japan. So it's like right in my wheelhouse.
Nice.
Super aggro, very purple, just everything I wanted it to be. So I'm sure there are other clans in the box, but that's where we're at for now.
If I played, I would be going Scorpion. I think surprising no one.
Scorpion. Aren't they? Oh, see, I thought I would have pegged you for Phoenix because they're the most like annoying ass tricks like Martel.
True.
Comparing it to Thrones specifically.
So Scorpions are the Thrones is a little bit different beast as far as what I lean to. But Scorpions are the kind of quote-unquote bad guys in a way. So like roguey and kind of Grima-esque. So
oh, there it is. Okay,
yeah.
That explains it all. All right. Well, so hopefully I'll be able to report back after playing a few games on the next Tentacle Time. All I've done so far is sleeve and make a couple of what I'm assuming are really unoptimized, terrible decks. So. Yeah, more to come on that one. The real question will be whether or not I continue to collect Thrones, because I love that game. I love Melee, but I have slowed down in playing it lately, and I feel like I've also slowed down in building decks for it. So I feel like I can just kind of keep the decks I have assembled, and whenever I want to play Thrones, we do it. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's the other thing. If I started L5R, I would have to stop Thrones. And at this point, I'm like, I might as well just stay with the one that I know already and am collecting, even though I don't play it often.
Yeah, it's tough. God, I wish time was not so finite.
Yeah.
I'd love to play more Thrones. I'd love to have more time to play L5R. I'd love to... Yeah, anyway. I'm sure everyone feels that way.
I'm also
If
curious.
you're listening to a podcast about a very specific LCG, chances are you have more time to think about the game than you do to play the game itself. So,
I'm curious if FFG will stop net here with LCGs, or who am I kidding whether they'll come out with some other LCG in the next few years.
what silliness is that?
Yeah,
like
stop.
No. See, I'm kind of coming around to the fact that everyone kind of thinks that each LCG is an individual product. Mm-hmm. I think that's false. I think FFG kind of treats the LCGs like as a product as a whole. Like, you can collect just one, but how many people do, first of all?
Yeah.
And then every LCG outsells the last. So why would they not just kind of continue? And it makes sense, the living card game, they each kind of have a life cycle. At a certain point, everyone gets sunsetted to make room in everyone's playbook and wallets for the new one to come out. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I would be very, very surprised if they stop here, but they are definitely pouring a lot of their resources into doing L5R well. So hopefully it is publicly acclaimed.
Yeah,
well.
I think L5R is going to take up their attention for the near future, but I think they probably would have to retire one of the other LCGs before they bring in a new one, just from the sake of attention and
I feel like Star
cannibalizing
Wars
the player
LCG
base.
is on the... Yeah, I feel like Star Wars LCG is definitely on the chopping block. It's the oldest competitive LCG, right?
Yeah.
What else is happening right now? No, Netrunner's older than that, but the Netrunner's getting its own revamp.
Right. Yeah.
So Star Wars LCG is on the chopping block because it's old, and because Destiny is a thing now.
Yeah. I feel like it's
I feel like they're just
probably not
stepping
long
on their
for this
own
world.
toes with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, Climbable Fungus in the chat. Yeah, Star Trek Co-op LCG. I would lose my mind if they did that. And then I would have to be on 3 podcasts and my life would be over. So
I'd play it.
It'd be both a good and bad thing.
All right, well, I think that wraps it up for episode 25 of Mythos Busters. Ian, anything to say as a parting shot?
No, just looking forward to talking Carcosa scenarios next time, and have fun at Arkham Knights. Tears in the rain.
Near, far, wherever you go. We'll be thinking of you. And so see everyone at Arkham Knights. Hopefully, well, everyone who's going, of course. If you want to come haggle us in the Arkham Knights channel in our Discord, feel free to come do that. And otherwise, if you are coming to Arkham Knights and you are interested in stopping by or coming for the whole thing of Tentic Ale time on Saturday night at Joe Sensors, we have created a Facebook event. I would ask, if you can, to go out there and at least show interest just so we can have a general idea for how many people are going to show up to this thing. And hopefully it'll be a good time. It's going to be a good time, let's be real. All right, so that wraps us up for 25. We will see you guys next time on Mythos Busters.